The archive room smells of dust and varnish. The date is March 14th, 1994. A cataloger named Petrov opens a crate marked only Foundry Records, miscellaneous 1870 to 1889. Inside, wrapped in rotting canvas, lies a leather-bound ledger. On its spine it reads, Kazan Bell Works. He opens the first page. The handwriting is meticulous. The ink is still jet black against the yellowed paper. The entry is dated June 3rd, 1871. Directive received. All civic bells to be recast. Iron mandated for economy and standardization. Petrov turns the page. The next entry, in the same hand, with the same ink, is dated June 4th, 1871. Bronze composition maintained. Ratio: 78% copper, 22% tin. Iron abandoned. No explanation follows, just numbers. Alloy percentages, temperature specifications, as if the contradiction does not exist. In the margin, someone has written in pencil, "They know why." History remembers progress but forgets what it replaced. The official narrative presents a simple story. In the late 19th century, as industrialization spread through Central Asia, city planners sought efficiency. Iron was cheaper than bronze. Steel mills multiplied. Foundries transitioned from ancient copper-tin alloys to modern ferrous metals. Bells should have followed. Agricultural equipment did. Railway components did. Architectural elements did. Civic bells did not. The ledgers from 17 foundries across the territories marked as Tartaria in 18th century cartography tell the same story. Iron was tried. Iron was rejected. Bronze continued, yet no document explains why. Official reports cite traditional methods. The marginal notes tell a different story. On August 12, 1873, in Samarkand, a foundry master named Yusupov cast an experimental bell in iron. The casting went smoothly. The bell was mounted in a civic tower on August 19th. It rang for 3 days. Everyone watched closely. On August 22nd, workers reported disturbances. The word appears in 5 separate documents. No definition accompanies it. The bell was removed on August 24th. The tower ledger notes, reinstalled bronze bell from storage. No issues. The iron bell was melted down. The metal was sold for railway ties. In the city archive, the original requisition form still survives. Someone has drawn a single line through the word iron and written bronze above it. The signature has been carefully scraped away. Only the seal remains, a civic stamp showing a tower with concentric circles radiating outward. Rain strikes the archive windows. Petrov photographs the page. The flash catches droplets on the glass. Outside, the city continues to move forward. Inside, the past contradicts itself in careful handwriting. The Kazan foundry records continue. Between 1871 and 1891, they document 347 bell castings. All are bronze. The copper-tin ratio varies slightly, 78 to 22, 77 to 23, 76.5 to 23.5, but never deviates into other materials. The temperature logs are meticulous. Celsius degrees recorded to a single decimal point. Cooling times measured in hours and minutes. Page 73 of the ledger contains a calculation. Someone has written out the formula comparing acoustic resonance in bronze versus iron. The mathematics are correct. The conclusion is circled twice. Iron. Harmonic degradation at 128 Hz and above. 128 Hz. The note middle C. The fundamental frequency of civic bell design across the region. Yet in 1873, when the Samarkand experiment failed, acoustic theory was barely taking shape. Helmholtz's work on the sensation of tone had been published only 8 years earlier. How would a Central Asian foundry master know the exact frequency at which iron failed? The next page is missing. The page after that resumes with routine casting reports. No reference to the calculation, no signature, just a gap where the explanation should be. By 1876, the pattern is established across the territories. Tashkent, Bukhara, Khiva, Kazan, every major city follows the same protocol. Official requisitions specify iron. Actual castings use bronze. This discrepancy appears ledger after ledger, archive after archive. No explanations, just crossed out words and substituted materials. In Vienna, the Imperial Metallurgical Institute published a study in 1879. Comparative acoustic properties of ferrous and cupric alloys in resonant applications. The author, an engineer named Adalbert Liebel, concluded that iron bells produced acceptable sound quality for industrial purposes. A marginal note added in different ink reads, "Unacceptable for civic infrastructure. See Eastern Protocols." Eastern Protocols. The phrase appears in 3 other documents from that period. None define what it means. Fog presses against the Institute's archive windows. The building is silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. A researcher examines Liebel's original manuscript. The pages are brittle. Several have been removed. The perforation marks remain along the binding. What was on those pages? The study recommends iron for bell casting. The Vienna municipal records show that between 1879 and 1895, every civic bell cast for the city was bronze. Snow falls on the buildings that once covered the territories marked Tartaria on Mercator's 1594 atlas. The name itself has become contentious. Modern scholars debate whether it represented a political entity, a geographic designation, or merely a cartographic convention for unmapped regions. What is not debated is this: cities existed there. They had civic infrastructure, and they cast bells. And without exception, all documented bells were bronze. On November 3, 1881, in Astrakhan, a bell cracked during installation. The incident report, filed by city engineer Dmitry Volkov, notes, "Hairline fracture, observed along interior surface. Pattern consistent with resonant stress. Bell removed for inspection." The inspection report follows. Someone has written across it in red ink, "Standard failure. Replace per protocol." But the bell was not standard. The foundry records show it was cast in iron, an experimental attempt ordered by a regional administrator pushing for cost reduction. The bronze replacement was installed within 4 days. The documentation makes no mention of the material substitution. Volkov's personal diary tells more. Discovered at a Volgograd estate sale in 2003, the entry for November 6, 1881 reads, "The iron bell produced sound, yes. But the birds would not approach the tower. Pigeons roosted elsewhere. Even the crows avoided the square. When the bronze replacement was mounted, they returned within hours. The administrator accepted our recommendation without question." Some things need no explanation. The phrase recurs in private correspondence from that era, always regarding bells, always regarding the preference for bronze over iron, never with elaboration. The question becomes, what did they observe that official records omit? Heat shimmers over the foundries of modern Uzbekistan. Metal workers still cast bronze, now for artistic rather than civic purposes. An elderly craftsman whose grandfather learned the trade in the 1920s recalls stories. My grandfather said the old bells, the ones from before the revolution, they had weight. Not just physical weight, presence. He said you could stand in the square when they rang and feel the air organize itself. His words, organize itself. I didn't understand. He said iron bells ring. Bronze bells sing. There is a difference. The difference appears in analyses conducted in 1998 by the Institute for Architectural Acoustics in Stuttgart. Researchers tested recordings of historical bells, bronze and iron, cast between 1870 and 1920. The bronze bells produced harmonic spectra with unusual coherence in the 64 to 256 Hz range, creating sustained standing wave patterns in enclosed spaces. The iron bells did not. The lead researcher, Dr. Helena Vogel, noted in her conclusion, bronze bell acoustics demonstrate properties that suggest intentional architectural integration. The frequencies align with space resonances in vaulted structures common to 19th century civic architecture. This implies design coordination between bell makers and architects that standard metallurgical theory does not account for. In the appendix, she adds, several bronze bell recordings show frequency stability that modern synthetic analysis cannot fully replicate. The alloy composition appears to create nonlinear harmonic reinforcement. Further study is needed. Further study was not conducted. Funding was not renewed. The Stuttgart Archive holds Vogel's research files. In a box marked Supplementary Data, not published, there are spectrograms. Frequency analyses showing three-dimensional wave patterns. The bronze bells create geometric forms, concentric rings spiraling outward, maintaining coherence across space. The iron bells create noise. Dust moves through lamplight. The archive closes at 6. Outside, the city of Stuttgart rings its own bells, modern steel alloys cast in 1967, electronically controlled. The sound is efficient, clean, functional, not the same. In Kazan, the city archive preserves architectural plans from 1868 to 1893. The plans show civic towers, market squares, administrative centers. Each includes acoustic specifications, detailed calculations for sound propagation, reflection, and absorption. The mathematics are sophisticated. The designs account for wind patterns, building materials, and seasonal temperature variations. Every design assumes bronze bells. The specifications note frequencies, 64 Hz, 100 to 28 Hz, 256 Hz. These are the harmonics of the scale, but they are also the resonant frequencies of human tissue, of stone architecture, and of the proportions used in the buildings themselves. One blueprint, dated March 1871, shows a tower in cross-section. The interior has spiral channels running floor to ceiling. The annotation reads, resonant channeling, per traditional specifications. Traditional specifications. The phrase suggests inherited knowledge, but whose? The blueprint is signed by an architect named Sergei Petrov. His other works, residential buildings, warehouses, administrative offices, show no such features. Only the tower designs include spiral channels, only the civic structures. A genealogical search reveals that Sergei Petrov's grandfather, also an architect, worked in Bukhara between 1820 and 1847. Family papers preserved by a descendant in modern Tatarstan include letters. One, dated July 1843, describes visiting the old towers and taking measurements of the interior forms. Which towers? The letter does not specify, but it notes, the proportions are precise. The channels guide sound as water guides water. One must hear it to believe it. Cold air seeps through gaps in the document storage. The paper is fragile. The ink has faded to brown, but the words remain. By 1885, the pattern extends beyond Central Asia. Istanbul municipal records show similar substitutions. Warsaw, Prague, Bucharest, cities across what was once the eastern periphery of European cartography, all document the same phenomenon. Iron attempted, bronze maintained. Official records show one decision. Physical evidence shows another. In Prague, the astronomical clock tower was renovated in 1887. The requisition called for iron bells to modernize the mechanism. The bells installed were bronze. The invoice preserved in the municipal archive has been altered. Someone crossed out iron and wrote bronze in the margin. The cost difference, substantial, was noted and then crossed out again. A receipt from the foundry survives separately. It shows payment for bronze. The date is 3 weeks before the official requisition was filed. The bells were cast before they were officially ordered. Someone knew the requisition would be changed. Gaslight flickers in the Prague archive. Outside, evening fog settles over the Vltava River. The modern city moves through its rhythms. The old clock still rings. Bronze bells, cast in 1887. Still functioning, the mechanism has been replaced 4 times. The bells remain. The question expands. If bronze was necessary, why did official policy push for iron? If iron was mandated, why was bronze installed? The answer may lie where bureaucratic inertia meets technical necessity. Regional administrators, distant from the actual work, issued modernization directives based on economic theory. Foundry masters, working with physical materials, knew what functioned. The contradiction was resolved through quiet substitution. But this explanation does not account for the missing pages, the scraped-away signatures, the marginal notes that speak of knowing without explaining what is known. In 1891, the Russian Empire conducted an infrastructure audit. The Ministry of the Interior sent inspectors to evaluate civic installations across the Eastern Territories. Their report, filed in March 1892, includes a section titled Bell Systems and Acoustic Infrastructure. The section is 7 pages long. Page 4 is missing. Page 5 begins mid-sentence. Therefore, bronze composition must be maintained regardless of cost considerations. Iron alternatives have proven unsuitable. Unsuitable, not inadequate, not inferior, unsuitable. The word implies something beyond simple quality comparison. The report recommends that traditional bell casting protocols be preserved and codified. It does not explain what those protocols are. It does not define unsuitable. The signature at the bottom belongs to an inspector identified only as VK. An archive search reveals no inspector with those initials working for the ministry in 1891 or 1892. Rain continues outside the archive. Petrov has been here for 11 hours. His photographs fill 3 memory cards. The ledgers tell a story without telling it. Numbers, dates, crossed out words, marginal notes, gaps. The final entry in the Kazan ledger is dated December 18, 1893. Bronze casting continues per directive. Copper, 78%. Tin, 22%. Temperature, 1085 degrees Celsius. Cooling time, 14 hours. Installation scheduled for January 1894. The work maintains. The work maintains, not the work continues. Maintains. As if something is being preserved, something that must be kept functioning. The next page is blank. The ledger ends. Snow drifts against the windows of the modern archive. Kazan has grown beyond its 19th century boundaries. The old civic towers still stand. Some have been converted into museums, some into observation decks, some into radio transmission stations. All still have their bronze bells, silent now, most of them. The mechanisms have deteriorated. The ropes have frayed, but the bells remain hanging in their original positions, untouched by renovation or replacement. In 2011, an acoustic survey was conducted as part of a restoration project. Engineers measured the resonant frequencies of 17 bells across 5 cities. The bells were cast between 1871 and 1893. All showed the same frequency profile. Fundamental tones at 64 Hz or 128 Hz, with harmonic overtones forming geometric patterns in the 256 to 512 Hz range. The survey noted, acoustic coherence suggests intentional tuning beyond standard bell-making practice. The precision of frequency relationships indicates knowledge of harmonic architecture, not documented in metallurgical literature from that period. The restoration project was completed. The mechanisms were repaired. The bells were remounted. They were not rung. The official reason: concern for structural stress on historic towers. Engineering reports show the towers can support the load. The bell mountings are sound. The acoustic impact has been modeled. Everything indicates the bells could ring safely. They remain silent. In Vienna, Liebel's research papers sit in a flat file drawer. The missing pages were never found. His later correspondence from 1881 to 1895 makes no mention of bell acoustics. He worked on railway bridge design, water system engineering, mundane infrastructure. But in 1894, a year before his death, he wrote a letter to a colleague. The letter is brief. It concerns a civic tower project in Graz. I recommend bronze for the bells. The cost is justified. Some frequencies require specific materials. This is not superstition. This is physics we do not yet understand. Physics we do not yet understand. Liebel was a trained engineer, a rational materialist, yet he wrote those words. The colleague's reply is lost. Liebel's letter survives only because it was used as scrap paper. The reverse side contains grocery calculations. Someone kept it for that reason, not for its content about bells. Dust settles on the flat file drawer. The archive is empty except for cleaning staff. The fluorescent lights hum at 50 Hz, the frequency of European electrical systems. A low drone, constant, barely noticed, not like bells. Modern metallurgists have analyzed samples from 19th century bronze bells. The alloy composition is standard, copper and tin ratios consistent with documented casting practices. No secret materials, no unusual additives. The crystalline structure shows expected grain patterns. The acoustic properties emerge from geometry, not chemistry. Yet when engineers attempt to replicate the bells using modern casting methods and identical alloy ratios, the acoustics differ. Contemporary bronze bells ring with clarity. Historical bells resonate with complexity. The harmonic spectra diverge after 256 Hz. Modern bells produce linear overtones. Historical bells produce interference patterns. Dr. Vogel's unpublished spectrograms show this difference visually. The modern bell creates a cone of sound, expanding outward, dissipating. The historical bell creates a torus, a ring of sustained pressure rotating around the bell's fundamental axis. The difference is not in the material, the difference is in the form. And the forms were derived from architectural specifications that assumed bronze. spiral interior channels, specific wall thickness ratios, harmonic relationships with the buildings they were mounted in. The buildings themselves were designed around the bells, not the other way around. Frost coats the windows. January in Kazan. The archive is cold. Petrov has returned to the ledgers dozens of times over the years since his discovery. He knows the handwriting now, can identify the different scribes, knows which entries are routine and which are significant. The entries never become clearer. The gaps never fill in. The marginal notes remain cryptic, but patterns emerge. Certain dates repeat. Summer solstice, winter solstice, equinoxes. Bell installations cluster around these times. Casting schedules align with lunar phases. Temperature specifications match diurnal cycles. These patterns appear across all 17 foundry ledgers. Kazan, Samarkand, Bukhara, Tashkent, cities separated by hundreds of kilometers, operated by different craftsmen using different suppliers. Yet the schedules synchronize. Coincidence or coordination? No documentation shows coordination. No correspondence between foundries survives. Yet the patterns persist. In 2018, a thesis analyzed civic architecture across Central Asia from 1850 to 1900. The researcher studying urban planning history noted that tower placements formed geometric networks, triangulations, specific distance ratios. The towers aligned with sight lines crossing city centers at precise angles. The thesis concluded, while no evidence suggests intentional network design, the statistical probability of such geometric regularity occurring by chance is negligible. The thesis was accepted. The researcher graduated, the paper was archived. It has been cited 3 times. All 3 citations are from conference proceedings no longer in print. Satellite imagery reveals the tower network clearly. Modern Kazan, viewed from above, shows the pattern. The old civic towers, those with bronze bells, form the vertices of nested triangles. The ratios between distances approximate phi, the golden ratio. The same pattern appears in Samarkand, in Bukhara. In 17 cities across the territories once labeled Tartaria. Architects in 1871 did not have satellite imagery. They did not have GPS. They had survey equipment, sextants, theodolites, line of sight. Yet they created geometric networks visible only from above. Today, heat shimmers over the cities. Air conditioning hums in archive buildings. Computers have replaced card catalogs. Digital scans preserve documents too fragile to handle. Progress continues. The bells remain. Bronze. Silent. Waiting. In Moscow, the State Historical Archive preserves imperial edicts from the 1880s and 1890s. One edict, dated April 1889, concerns preservation of civic acoustic infrastructure. The language is bureaucratic. The directive is clear. Bronze bells in civic installations are to be maintained indefinitely. Replacement with alternative materials is prohibited. The edict provides no justification. It simply prohibits change. The same year, the Ministry of Finance issued a counter-directive. Cost reduction in civic infrastructure necessitates transition to ferrous materials where feasible. 2 directives, contradictory, both official. The bronze bells remained. Cost reduction was implemented in every other category: street lamps, water pipes, building facades, everything except the bells. Someone, somewhere, made a decision. The decision was implemented across thousands of kilometers. It was maintained for decades. And it left almost no documentary trail, just ledgers, marginal notes, crossed-out words, missing pages, and bells, bronze bells, cast with geometric precision. tuned to frequencies that organize space, hung in towers forming geometric networks, silent now, but present. Fog moves through the streets of modern cities built on old foundations. The towers still stand, converted, repurposed, preserved. The bells hang in darkness, cold metal to the touch, dust coating their surfaces, but the bronze endures, copper and tin fused, at temperatures that burn away impurities. The crystalline structure remains stable, the acoustic properties persist, the geometry holds. If the bells rang today, the frequencies would be the same: 64 hertz, 128 hertz, 256 hertz. The harmonics would cascade down the towers, through the spiral channels into the squares below. The air would organize itself. The birds would know. They always did. History records that industrialization brought progress. Iron replaced bronze. Steel replaced stone. Efficiency replaced tradition. The narrative is simple, linear, unambiguous. Yet in the archives, contradictions accumulate: official policy versus actual practice, mandated materials versus installed materials, documented costs versus paid invoices. Every source tells two stories simultaneously. And in the margins, someone wrote, "They know why." Who knows? What do they know? The questions remain. The bells remain. The towers remain. The work maintains. If history is written by survivors, who erase the rest? Yes, dear listeners, we have come to the end of this documentary. I look forward to your suggestions or valuable comments below. Thank you for listening.